Hello and welcome to Allegedly Astrology. Each week we break down the astrology that happened during some of the biggest scandals and events in history.
Thanks for listening, and if you guys want to support us even more, you can subscribe to our Patreon. For $5 a month, you get at least 2 extra episodes.
You could also leave us a 5-star review and subscribe on whatever podcast platform you listen on.
And if you leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify and DM us a screenshot of that review, we'll make you a custom meme of your big three and send you a quick write-up about it.
We also have cool Allegedly Astrology stuff on TeePublic, so go there to check it out.
And make sure to follow us on social media. We're Allegedly Astrology on Instagram, Reddit, and TikTok, and Allegedly Astro on Twitter.
And you can visit our website, allegedlyastrology.com, to learn more about us and the show, or book a reading with me, Dana, and check out charts and transcripts for select episodes.
So, Dana, what are we talking about today?
Today we're talking about Hollywood's double strike.
And this was a request from Sophia and Danielle. And if you want to be like them, slide into our DMs or email us and we might cover the topic.
Woo! Yes, thank you, Sophia and Danielle. So, here we go. This is the strike that's been happening in Hollywood that you've undoubtedly heard all about. It involves both writers and actors and marks the first time in 63 years that both are striking at the same time. And it centers around needing to renegotiate contracts due to the changing entertainment environment and technological advances. The strike is expected to stop the majority of TV and film production in Hollywood, making it the largest interruption to American television and film production since COVID. It's not only going to bring a significant moment in cultural history, but also heavy economic losses. So let's check out the astrology.
Okay, so a little background on what is happening. So this strike involves the Writers Guild of America, which is a union for people that write scripted series, features, news programs, and other content, and it represents more than 20,000 writers in Hollywood. So this union negotiates with the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers, which is the trade association that reps film and television studios. So this is the people who write a lot of the content, negotiating with the people that produce it and make it happen, all the people that have the money. So every 3 years, they negotiate a contract. And the contract currently in place was negotiated in 2020, and it was effective until May 1st, 2023.
And the Writers Guild of America contract ensures that writers make at least a minimum amount and aren't screwed by studios. The thought is, since they're creating the very popular film and TV shows that make the studios a ton of money, the writers should be able to make a living wage. What a novel concept.
So the agreement they decide on creates writers' salaries, benefits, pensions, working conditions, residual payments, and creative rights. So if this contract didn't exist, each writer would have to figure all of this out on their own, which would suck because they would honestly probably get screwed over for one person for studio.
Exactly. And for the 2023 negotiations, the Writers Guild of America had a couple of points, but the main ones that they wanted increased compensation because inflation, because with inflation, screen pay has declined 14% in the last 5 years. And the other big area of contention is residuals and basic worker protections with streaming.
And residuals are long-term payments you get if you worked on a show. So when the show airs again, you get paid for it after its initial release. And this was a much bigger deal during the broadcast TV days, but now basically everything is streaming.
Yes, and streaming companies do give actors residuals, but it's a lot less than when it was on broadcast. So, think about Spotify giving artists less money than you would get for radio rights. It's the world of streaming has impacted so many industries. But, for example, if you were a writer on Stranger Things, which brought in a ton of money and still does for Netflix, you don't share at all in the profit, even though you're a main reason that Netflix is making money, which is crazy.
It's insane. Yeah, no, they're just
angry right now.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. So the Writers Guild also has other issues with streaming, which deal with crazy timelines, understaffed shows. Some comedy shows for streaming networks ignore these basic writer protections that the Writers Guild negotiates, like they just basically ignore them. And they want to make sure that like AI writing tools like Chat GPT be used as a tool for writing research and not something that could replace their jobs, which also makes a lot of sense. And these points that we just talked about in total were approved by 98.4% of all the Writers Guild members. So people are like, we're down with all of this. Like,
We are.
What does the
down.
1.6 think they know?
they were probably like bit by a squirrel or something and they couldn't vote.
So, and after 6 weeks of negotiations, the WGA went on strike because they could not reach an agreement.
And the AMPTP, which is like the alliance of like the studios and the motion picture companies, they said they couldn't fulfill the Writers Guild's requests because, and this is horseshit, they said that minimum staffing quotas are antithetical to the creative process, meaning like they're saying like, we don't want to guarantee that there'll be 5 writers per show because that's not fair to the creative process, which like
Want
honestly
computers to
doesn't
write their
make
scripts. They don't care about the creative process.
I know, it's very true. And they also said that the wage increase that the writers were asking for is the highest first year increase. Oh, they're saying that what they are offering the writers right now in terms of wages is like the highest first year increase ever. So like you should stop like bitching about it. And when it comes to AI, they said like, we'll consider talking more about it moving forward. So that does not sound promising. But also like I'm a copywriter. I don't use AI tools that much. But I mean, I feel like you still need someone to oversee Chat GPT. Like, I think you still need someone to edit it.
Something
like,
I've heard, though, is that people are worried that it would just be like one person then doing, all this work instead of like a team. Or I don't know if that makes
Yeah, I actually listened to a really good podcast about it on The Daily, the New York Times' podcast. And what I didn't necessarily realize is that, like, because AI is continuously like scouring the internet and like scraping your data. Like there's been so much content out there. Like, so for example, someone like Sarah Silverman, she spent like decades and decades like honing her creative voice and doing all these things that make her comedic style and her writing style very, very unique. And when she asked ChatGPT to like write something in the style of Sarah Silverman, it could almost do it in an uncanny way. And so that's the difference, is that they definitely need to be edited for sure. But like what I think the studios think is that like, oh, we can ask ChatGPT to write in this style, write a TV show based on this style, write a TV show based on this, if this person wrote it. And then all you have to do is have like some editors and prompt engineers kind of like zhuzh it up and it's ready to go. So I think that's where the actors and writers are like particularly worried about it. And even, journalists too it's definitely a debate, and we're just on the like cusp of the AI conversation. And I'm sure we'll talk a lot about it more. But yeah.
What was going on when the strike went down?
It started on May 2nd, 2023 at 12:01 a.m. in Los Angeles, California. And this chart has a sun in Taurus, moon in Libra, Capricorn rising. Hell yeah, baby. Let's make things just. This big 3 is all about business, values, self-worth, and justice. With the sun in Taurus, it's also Mercury retrograde Cazimi in the 5th house. So it's going back. It's like talking about the creative process.
Oh yeah, creative.
This is very much like, I remember that. I love that movie title, Women Talking. I feel like that's very much this retrograde. Or Mercury retrograde Cazimi. And it's co-present with Mercury retrograde, the North Node, Uranus. And so this is about surprise. It's about moving forward. It's about reviewing the fine print. It's about innovation, reviewing values, and like valuation as well. And the moon's in Libra. So this is all about fairness. And the moon in mundane charts represents like the populace, like the people. So this is them banding together. The people are focused on fairness and justice, and they're organizing. And the moon is trine Pluto in Aquarius. So this is about changing things, but it's also about power struggles, because it could give the people the upper hand. It can give Pluto it can give like the powerful people the upper hand. Pluto and Aquarius are both about like, it's going to be like dystopian before it's not. And we're already used to that. So no one's surprised by that. before like things get, worked out. But there's a Capricorn rising. So this is about business. It's about structure, systems, the old guard and hierarchies. And like there needs to be security and upward mobility and organization. And that's what they want. They're not like looking for like glory as much as they're looking for like workable conditions. This chart also has Cancer, Mars in the 7th house. So this is where like they're in a struggle session. Maybe they're not being taken seriously. Maybe they have to, go fight. They're the underdog. They can expect to be provoked by their opponents. Like Cardi B has Mars in Cancer, and she just had that whole situation where someone threw water at her and then she threw their microphone at her and everyone's like, fuck you. And it's like, well, someone threw water at her. So I stand with Cardi, I guess. And it's also, so my dramatic interpretation of this chart is that this is what happens if like the factory farm takes all the cow milk and the calves are malnourished and they're like, we need milk.
Oh, wow.
Damn. Okay. That was
But milk, we need money. We need money when we need milk.
yes.
Give us that milk.
You know what? Capricorn risings can do anything, said from a Capricorn rising. But anyway, the strike means that the writers that are part of the Writers Guild have to stop working, which means they are not getting paid until the union votes to end the strike. However, writers who work in broadcast TV, radio, streaming news, online media, nonfiction podcast, nonfiction TV, public TV will be able to continue working.
So no writers means a lot of production stop, which means everyone that works on set and in the entertainment business, from caterers to directors to background actors, are also affected.
Yes, and this has a huge impact on the economy. The last writer's strike was in 2007. It lasted for about 100 days, and it cost $2.1 billion to California's economy.
Which is crazy. But it's not just the writers that are striking. It's time to talk about the actors. And the actors are represented by the Screen Actors Guild, American Federation of Television and Radio Artists. It's called, their little acronym is like SAG-AFTRA, but we're just going to call them SAG. And that is a labor union that represents about 160,000 screen actors in Hollywood. And they were also negotiating a contract with kind of like the union that works with the motion picture houses and like the studios.
Yes, and the actors had some similar demands to the writers. They wanted an increased salary minimum. They wanted increased residuals for streaming. They want payment and content. They want payment for their likeness to be used in AI training models, which is already being done without their consent. And there were also some other requests, like creating rules around self-tape auditions, etc.
So SAG's contract was initially up on July 1st, but discussions were extended through July 12th because SAG was like, we will be friendly, we will extend negotiations, but no agreement was made. So SAG voted to strike. So what was going on when they went on strike?
This was July 14th, 2023 at 12:01 a.m. in Los Angeles, California, and the sun is in Cancer, the moon's in Gemini, and this chart is an Aries rising. So the Cancer sun, this is about nurturance and support. I feel like it also highlights the struggle of the Cancer Mars from the chart of the Writers Guild. It's sort of like coming to support that in a way, if that makes sense. It's like,
yeah,
because the
thick as thieves.
Yeah, I love
Cancer,
that.
Thick as thieves.
Yeah, and the moon's in Gemini. So it's about ideas and friendship and walking and sort of being like
walking
neurotic. It is about, because Gemini has to walk in order, your ideas flow better if you walk, if you're a Gemini, if you're doing two things at once. And also like banding together. It's, two people. It's like siblings, a group. But the moon's also in the dark moon phase, and it rules the Cancer sun, which is interesting. So things maybe feel more uncertain or more disjointed, but also sort of necessary. I feel like if something is happening during a dark moon phase, like it's a long time coming. And this chart is an Aries rising, so there's drama, there's birthing something new. It's also conjunct Chiron, so it's like we're wounded here, and like, you know what I mean? It's like a baby. Okay, so I guess I'm really into babies this episode, but it's like, yeah, I don't know. It's like it just needs to be like fed and like nurtured. The chart ruler is also Mars and Virgo in the 6th house, opposite Saturn and Pisces in the 12th house. And this, to me, represents that they might have their hands tied, but they also, I don't know if they stand to lose less money or. And I only say that because the planets are in their respective joys, but the 6th house is about work that you're subjected to. The 12th house is about like enemies that you don't know you have. So it's sort of like they don't maybe feel like they don't know what they're up against, but they have to do it, if that makes sense. Hopefully with the planets in their respective joys, these sort of like Mars being able to buckle down in the 6th house and Saturn sort of like isolating 12,000 things is really on their side. It's also 8 days before Venus stationed retrograde in Leo. So Venus is slow and Leo's a sign of the star. So that plus like Aries rising, it's very much about like stardom, drama, but also it's like dire. It's like, we need to be seated. Like this needs to be addressed.
I have a client right now. They like want a ton of celebrities in all their ads. And we were like talking about like maybe the actors might go on strike. And honestly, right when I got like an email saying like SAG is on strike, and it doesn't like affect ads, but I feel like people are like, celebrities will be like frowned upon, I think, if they're in ads, like, you know, they want to show like solidarity. But when I realized, like, just thinking about it, like Venus is in Leo, like it's like obviously this is gonna happen. And obviously it being like retrograde, well, it's about to be retrograde, it's gonna go over all of those degrees again. So but anyway, Fran Drescher, aka the nanny, is SAG president, which I don't know why this surprised me so much, but I was like, Fran.
I too was surprised.
Yeah, surprised.
But she is the SAG president. She is pissed, and she said SAG wanted to avoid a strike and even gave, you know, the studios 12 extra days to negotiate, but they kind of just like dicked around and then didn't do anything. So that like really made her mad. If you want to learn more about Fran and her bi-wheel with SAG, we're going to be talking about that on the Patreon. So join us there.
I'm really excited to learn more about Fran Drescher. I feel like I forgot about her. And then when I've seen her in all these SAG clips, I'm like, damn, I wonder what's up with Fran.
I know. I learned she did not only star in The Nanny, but she also co-created and executive produced it. So
that was before every actor was an executive producer, you guys. That's a big deal.
I just think of her laugh. It's like, hey.
It's like Janice from Friends.
Yeah, at least on The Nanny, that's how she laughed.
Yes. And this is the first time that both the WGA and SAG have been on strike against the studios at the same time since 1960. So it's been a while. This is definitely a historical event that we're witnessing.
It's also interesting that they continue to like negotiate on the same timeline, because it's like, why didn't you try and avoid this? Like have, you know, like this has happened before. So in 1960, the Writers Guild began striking against, you know, the Alliance of Television Film Producers because they wanted to be paid more. And writers wanted studios to pay into their health and pension funds, as well as increased wages and residuals related to their work being shown on television or television reruns, which again, like this is like similar but different, you know, like they're still asking for the same stuff. So what was going on when the strike started?
So this was January 16th, 1960 in Los Angeles, California, and the sun was in Capricorn and the moon was in Leo and Virgo. So the sun in Capricorn, of course it was, right? It's also the rising of the Writers Guild strike of 2023, so that makes sense. This is the sun in Capricorn is about getting down to business, and reminding me of a cheer from when I was a little kid, which is let's get down to business. Our business is success. That's very Capricorn. It's also co-present with its ruler, Saturn, and domicile. So this is about organizing and highlighting the hierarchy. Mercury, the planet of connection and communication, and Mars, the planet of action and pursuit. So this is the sun, it's a spotlight, it's highlighting all of these things. So the moon's in Leo, which is the sign of the star, the celebrity. So we're highlighting celebrities, and it's also after a full moon, and the sun is so this is like a phase. Actually, this is interesting. This is the opposite of Chet Hayes' chart. But yeah, so the sun in Capricorn and the moon in Leo, this is very much about like working towards power and like banding together, because like you need to be sort of recognized in like it's two signs that want power. The moon in Virgo, though, is about connection, organization, manifesting ideas, reason, and logic. Also, Venus stationed direct in Leo 116 days earlier. So although Venus is not slow, it's still in a year where Venus was retrograde in Leo like it is now. So that's very interesting and very fitting with what we frequently talk about, which are that these like certain themes come up again and again. It doesn't necessarily even have to be within the retrograde time, right? Like while the planet is retrograde or even in the shadow phase, but sometimes it's just like the year is enough, which I think is interesting. Also, just like now, the eclipses, well, this year the eclipses were in Libra, Aries, Virgo, and Pisces. And the writer's strike the current writer's strike began during eclipse season after a solar eclipse in Aries. And the benefics in this chart are conjunct in Sagittarius. So the greater benefic Jupiter is in domicile in Sag. So this bodes well for sort of banding together and like receiving the goodwill and gifts, abundance. And the malefics are conjunct in Capricorn, where they're both dignified. So this is about extreme circumstances, but the ability to withstand pressure and stand your ground, and sort of like a willingness to negotiate, but also to sort of like make it fair.
So a few months later, SAG decided to strike because they were fighting over residuals from films sold to TV networks, resulting in the industry's first double strike ever. So what was going on when SAG striked in 1960?
This was March 7th, 1960 in Los Angeles, and the sun was in Pisces and the moon was in Cancer. So cool. The sun in Pisces is about having sort of spiritual purposes, like a higher purpose. Also, like Pisces has been abused in some capacity. It's like we're closing the cycle. It's also about like a psychic experience and the like banding together. It's a religious experience maybe for some of these people to sort of join forces. And so Mercury stationed retrograde 6 days earlier, and this really highlights, I think, the psychic torment and like vague nature of abuse that the actors endured.
The psychic torture.
Like they for sure did. It's also 6 days before a lunar eclipse in Virgo, so that's pretty interesting. This is about purification, highlighting corruption and like the pursuit sort of purification and innocence in a way. And also negotiating. Like Virgo's like, we need to talk about this because it's really fucked up. Jupiter's also at 0 degrees Capricorn, so this is building to a great conjunction in Capricorn. So it's linked to a major cycle. This whole thing is what that means, because the great conjunction is like really how we mark eras in astrology. And it's also interesting because this is the penultimate great conjunction in an earth sign, and that means it's about money and power and acquiring earthly possessions, and also sort of understanding that life is finite.
Whoa.
There's also the greater benefics is conjunct the greater malefic, so that's a major cycle. Again, it's a great conjunction. But also interesting is that the greater benefic is in fall and the malefic Saturn is in domicile. So Jupiter's in fall in Capricorn, Saturn's in domicile. So the underdog has to really fight, and it will probably still be cheated, but they're going to do their best. Or they're just like maybe, they're not getting the credit that's due. They maybe also don't have all the information, because Jupiter's a lot about knowledge. And Venus and Mars are conjunct in Aquarius. So that's the lesser benefic conjunct the lesser malefic. And it's also in a Saturn ruled sign. So it's really about hard work. Venus is art, fairness, and money. Mars is pursuit, action, and war. And in Aquarius, it's about like a community of people banding together and conformity to some cause or bottom line. So even if these people don't all agree, or they have very a lot of differences, they're like, here's what we were agreeing on, and we're going to work towards it together.
Something hilarious to note about this situation is that Ronald Reagan, who would become president of the United States, was SAG president and led the negotiations. So the strike halted production on 8 feature films, but it ended when SAG agreed to a new residual amount and got a pension and health plan. So it did work out well for them. So what happened when their strike ended?
So this was April 18th, 1960 in Los Angeles. The sun was in Aries. The moon was in Aquarius and Capricorn. So the sun in Aries, this is beginning anew. It's also co-present with Mercury, the planet of connection, writing, and thus contracts and communication. And Venus, which is in detriment. So maybe they're not fighting a fair fight. Maybe they're not getting... Maybe the studios aren't fighting a fair fight, or like they could feel cheated, or optimistically, I think maybe they feel they had to fight, but they still got what they wanted. They stuck to their guns.
It wasn't that long. That was like, what, 6 weeks?
Yeah, it's pretty short. I mean,
it's pretty short.
Yeah, definitely wasn't the internet age. Couldn't get those takes off in memes. The moon in Aquarius means that it's people banding together. It's talking. It's fodder. The moon in Aquarius is about hard work and like pointedness towards one goal. Jupiter stationed retrograde 1 day after, so that's about, abundance, goodwill. And Uranus stationed direct 5 days later, so that's surprising, maybe. Also, this chart has Jupiter trine Pluto, so this could be a positive change, or it could be a covert victory for the establishment, but I guess if they concede, it's not a victory. So I just think it's sort of like the power working together with the people to sort of make, something work for everyone, or...
But the writers were not that lucky during this time. They kept on trucking along until the Writers Guild agreed to a really big deal that gave them a pension fund, insurance plan, and new residuals. They were happy, so the strike ended after 148 days, which is about, 3 times as long as the SAG strike. So what was going on when that strike finally ended?
That was June 12th, 1960 in Los Angeles. The sun was in Gemini, the moon was in Aquarius. So this is a nice air trine, a lot of writing, a lot of communication and community. The sun in Gemini is about ideas, creativity, ingenuity, duality. The moon in Aquarius, it was also in Aquarius for the SAG. So that's interesting that the moon is in Aquarius for both charts. It's about, again, people banding together to work towards a common goal. Jupiter had retrograded back into Sagittarius, so that really bodes well for agreement. I wonder if they got the better deal. The sun was conjunct Venus in Gemini, so this bodes well for connectivity and feeling like you got one over. It's also good for cash, money, and fairness. It's two things coming together. Mercury in Cancer, though, which rules that Venus-Sun conjunction, is opposite Saturn in Capricorn. So this is where it gets sticky. It's coming up against power and having to state your claim. It's also getting further with honey than you do with vinegar and needing to be diplomatic and keep your cool, even when you're provoked. It's also sort of maybe using humor to get your way. I don't know. I'm just going to fan fiction. Venus is also squaring the node, so it's at the bending of the node. So this insinuates fated changes for art and money. Everyone feels maybe a little bit out of control. This is where fate takes over.
Ooh, it's so interesting that both charts, the SAG 1960 strike and the WGA 1960 strike, ended with the moon in Aquarius.
Yeah.
The moon at different times too. The collective. So, interesting. Something to keep an eye on.
Especially during this time around where so much of it is based around obviously money, but also Aquarius themes like AI and, innovation, technology is what I'm trying to say. But the writers and actors strikes of the 1960s also dealt with similar topics of improved benefits and residuals. So let's check out the bi-wheel with today's strike. What's in similar moments?
So we're looking at the chart for July 14th, 2023, 12:01 a.m. with March 7th, 1960, 12 p.m. in Los Angeles for both. So the current Neptune is conjunct the 1960 Mercury South Node conjunction. And this makes so much sense because it's kind of a confusion. It's they could never have predicted what they would be up against right now, right? At least to my knowledge, I don't know that they did. It's just sort of having to predict that people wouldn't even be writing scripts, so they'd be written by computers, or that your likeness would be reproduced in that way is interesting. Mars is also conjunct the 1960 Pluto in Virgo. So this is about making sure you get paid for the work that you do. It's also maybe having extremely detailed contracts, deceptiveness and neurosis, maybe originally with Pluto and Virgo sort of I don't know that the original contracts, it just seems like the original conditions were so shitty that any sort of improvement was an improvement. They drove Judy Garland to complete insanity. I don't know.
Yeah, they're smoke cigarettes, don't be fat.
Yeah, her diet was 80 cigarettes a day and Adderall and Xanax to go to sleep. It was just basically or amphetamines. I don't know what it was then. But they were you're really fat.
Yeah.
A normal sized person.
Have you tried not being fat, Judy?
You're also pretty ugly, so you're going to be skinny.
Poor Judy.
Poor Judy. It's also forging ahead toward the power that the original people had to fight against. And there's Cancer influence in both. So the moon is in Cancer in the 1960 chart. The sun was in Cancer for the 2023 chart. So I feel it's nurturing. It's about maternal care. It's sort of taking each other under your wing, right? There are some, Mark Ruffalo wore did you see his clothes? He wore he Googled poor people clothes and then bought them and then put them on. He was wearing paint splattered clothes. He looked absolutely ridiculous. But Lizzie McGuire, who I love, what's her name? God, Hilary Duff is out there. There are a lot of, it's just sort of the whole spectrum of people are sort of banding together. I think it seems nice that a lot of influential, of course, I also feel this is a lot sort of to do with from the bottom up, right? Because a lot of the conditions have been sort of talked about as though it's they feel they're working in a gig economy, right? So that was already a problem with Uber and DoorDash and whatever. And so now it's sort of all of these problems that were, are becoming everyone's problems in a way. So it's sort of if it can happen to someone else, it can happen to you, I guess.
Well, today, like Dana was saying, tons of celebrities like Mark Ruffalo, Hilary Duff, Meryl Streep, J-Law, Brendan Fraser, who we covered on episode 2 of this season.
The king.
Go listen to it if you have not. King. Writers and actors are coming forward on social media to show support for their unions. Like, if you're not supporting anyone who crosses the picket line, like, people are getting so annoyed with.
Scabs. But yeah, the effects are, already being seen. Late night shows were one of the first to be writerless. Many shows are now paused or shut down. Actors are not promoting their films. You're not allowed to engage in promotional stuff when you're on strike. And even some content creators, aka influencers, are part of SAG as well. So there's a lot of stuff that, again, we're just sort of starting to see the implications of all of this.
But something that will probably be fine, not surprisingly, is streaming. It's probably going to be okay just because if you're streaming a streaming network, you typically have like a ton of shows like banked for a while. So people are saying like they have enough content where like they'll be able to like tide audiences over for a while. But I actually don't know what it means for isn't Stranger Things supposed to come out soon? Or
they're on hold. Like they paused filming, so it will be delayed.
Yes. Yeah.
So there'll be a lot of things.
Season end.
I know there'll be a lot of delays, but like Sarah said, there's a lot of content banked. And if you're a fan of reality TV, I'm sure there'll be plenty of new shows for you to watch because those writers are actually not allowed to be in the Writers Guild, which interestingly enough, I wonder if that will change. But Dana, knowing all of this, do you have any predictions for when the strike will end, either the WGA or SAG, and what the outcome might be? Favorable to the unions or favorable to the studios/streamers?
Well, okay. I feel like it's always going to be that the big guys win. But there's always going to be a little, like, anytime that they have to concede a little bit, it feels like hell for them, whereas any sort of little victory is like pushing forward. I don't know. Okay, so I have some predictions. The first is August 17th, 2023, and that's because the North Node will be conjunct the Jupiter, where Jupiter was at the writer's strike on May 2nd. So Jupiter's a planet of goodwill. With the North Node crossing, it could be increased. So that could bode really well, I think, for at least the writers. Like, I feel like it boded really well for the writers last time too, just astrologically, which maybe that strengthens. My next prediction is around October 14th in October, because October 14th, that's a solar eclipse in Libra, which is the moon sign of the original strike date. And so the moon in Libra is all about justice, and the solar eclipse is like starting anew. It's also things that you could never predict. So these are outcomes that are like, whoa. And then this fall, we have the eclipse in Taurus, or we have on October 28th, there's a lunar eclipse in Taurus. It's the last eclipse in Taurus, the Taurus Scorpio series. And that one's conjunct the strike Sun and Mercury. So that's about contracts and moving forward with that. And so that could be also really surprising contracts. So it could, I guess that could favor either side. It could also be going back to something since it's conjunct the original Mercury is retrograde. Otherwise, I think next summer, which I feel like that's so long and I must be wrong, but that lines up of the original strikes, like from the 60s. So that's interesting because next summer we'll start the Virgo eclipses. And so the original strikes in 1960 happened when the eclipses were in Aries, Libra, Virgo, and Pisces, and that will begin next year. So
that would be crazy. But at the same time, a lot of my friends that work in the industry have been saying that they're hearing from like their agents and people that to be prepared for a really, really, really long strike. Like they think the studios are going to hold out for literally as long as humanly possible. So they said that they don't think it would be highly unlikely to come to an agreement in 2023.
I was like, whoa.
Sorry. So they are planning for it to go through.
Interesting.
Yeah. And then that helps streamers who are bleeding money, to have things on their books not look so bad in 2023.
Not all actors are SAG. So you could just hire a non-union actor. Which is a thing.
Most of the big ones are, though.
It would be so funny if it just sounds so funny to me if they like start pulling out like the movies that for sure should never be seen. Like everyone's just watching them. You know what I mean?
I love that.
For yeah, I definitely want to see it. But it's just for like content to get even more ironically enjoyed would be like wild. Because I feel like we peaked. I thought we would have peaked by now.
Well, what remains to be seen. We will be keeping a close eye on it. And in the meantime, remember to sign up for our Patreon for just $5 a month and get that extra chart about Fran Drescher and her bi-will with SAG. And maybe she'll become president of the United States like former SAG president Ronald Reagan became president of the United States. That would be crazy. And you know what? You'll find out. You'll find out if that's a possibility if you sign up for our Patreon. So with that, I'm Elise.
I'm Dana.
And I'm Sarah.
And this is Allegedly Astrology.
How funny would it be to go from listening to Joe Biden talk to listening to Fran Drescher talk?